Have you ever questioned why the United States continuously upholds Israel's actions against Palestine, despite the escalating global scrutiny? Today we're unveiling the historical groundwork of this long-standing alliance, a partnership that has persisted for over 70 years and continues to mold the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. The journey started in 1948, when President Harry Truman took a pivotal step that would determine the trajectory of history. Despite objections from some members of his administration, Truman validated the State of Israel merely minutes post its declaration of independence. His decision was motivated by various factors, including humanitarian concerns for the displaced Jewish survivors of the Holocaust, domestic political factors, and the conviction that a Jewish state would align with American interests in the region. This marked the inception of a relationship that would intensify over time. The strategic significance of Israel, situated in the epicenter of the Middle East, was not overlooked by the United States. Israel's military power, democratic governance, and alignment with American interests made it the perfect ally in a region frequently marked by instability. Additionally, there were ideological motivations that underpinned this alliance. The narratives of both nations were permeated with a sense of divine providence and a pioneering spirit. Just as the United States viewed itself as a city upon a hill, a beacon of democracy and freedom, so too did Israel perceive itself as a homeland for the Jewish people, a sanctuary formed from the wilderness. Over time, the U.S.-Israeli bond has withstood numerous geopolitical tempests. From the Suez Crisis in 1956 to the Six-Day War in 1967, the Yom Kippur War in 1973, and the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the United States has largely supported Israel, providing it with diplomatic shielding, military aid, and moral support. However, this unwavering support has not been without its critics. Many suggest that this lopsided support hampers the peace process, undermines America's credibility as an unbiased mediator, and contravenes the principles of justice and human rights. As evident, the U.S.-Israeli bond is deeply entrenched in history and continues to influence current events. As we traverse through this intricate and often contentious relationship, it's essential to understand its historical context, as it is only through understanding the past that we can aspire to shape the future. If you found this video informative and enjoyed the deep dive into history, don't forget to press the like button and subscribe to our channel for more insightful content. Your interaction helps us to keep bringing you more of such intriguing content. Now, let's delve into the recent developments that have sparked debates worldwide. In the early weeks of 2024, the United States decided to transfer some of the 300,000 155mm shells stored in Israel for use in Ukraine. This move, which was conducted without the necessity of Israeli permission, is part of a broader strategy to replenish U.S. munitions while simultaneously providing aid to Ukraine. Meanwhile, Israel has remained cautious about sending military aid to Ukraine due to security concerns. The strain on weapons stockpiles and the ability of the U.S. industrial base to meet demand present significant challenges for the Biden administration. In an effort to address these issues, the U.S. announced plans to buy artillery ammunition from South Korean manufacturers for Ukraine in late 2023. At the same time, the U.S. has been providing additional aid to Israel amidst escalating violence with Palestine. This aid and support have come in various forms, including the redirection of fighter jets and aircraft carriers towards Israel. The specific munitions being sent to Israel are unclear, but interceptors and precision-guided munitions may be included. These decisions have been met with criticism as they are seen as U.S. support for Israel's actions against Palestine. In a move that raised eyebrows, the U.S. also made the controversial decision to prevent members of the Palestinian Liberation Organization from entering the country. This decision has been viewed as an attempt by the U.S. to stifle voices of dissent and has sparked debates about the U.S.'s commitment to freedom of speech and its role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. These actions have further intensified the debate on the U.S. stance towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As tensions continue to rise, the world watches with bated breath, hoping for a peaceful resolution to this enduring conflict. While political maneuverings continue, a humanitarian crisis unfolds in Palestine. The ripple effects of escalating violence are felt hardest by the most vulnerable. Each shell that lands, each life lost, each home destroyed, is a blow to the human spirit. The toll of this conflict is not just counted in the dead and wounded, but in the living conditions of those who remain. Palestinians are grappling with a daily reality of power outages, water shortages, and food insecurity. Hospitals, already strained under the weight of a global pandemic, are now overwhelmed with casualties of war. Amid this backdrop, the blockade on aid to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees, known as UNRWA, is exacerbating the suffering. The agency, once a lifeline for millions of Palestinians, has seen its funds dwindle in recent years, in part due to U.S. policy decisions. The aid that once provided food, healthcare, and education to some of the world's most vulnerable people is now severely constrained. This blockade is not just a political move, it is a decision that impacts the lives and futures of countless individuals. The larger picture here is one of human rights. Every individual has the right to life, liberty, and security of person, as stated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Yet these rights are routinely violated in the heat of conflict. The disparity in power dynamics between the Israeli government and the Palestinian people has resulted in an imbalance of suffering, with Palestinians bearing the brunt of the hardship. The human cost of this conflict underscores the urgency for a resolution. The lives lost, the homes destroyed, the futures uncertain, these are the real consequences of this ongoing strife. As we look forward, let us remember the human faces behind the headlines, the stories left untold, and the voices crying out for peace. Despite the government's stance, U.S. public opinion on this issue is far from unanimous. A rising tide of dissent is challenging the traditional narratives surrounding the U.S.-Israel relationship. From the streets to the halls of Congress, voices are being raised, calling for a re-evaluation of U.S. policies towards Israel. In recent years, we've seen a proliferation of protests across major American cities, with demonstrators standing in solidarity with the Palestinian people. They are demanding an end to the violence, an end to the occupation, and an end to U.S. financial support for Israel. These protests, often led by young, diverse groups, are a testament to the changing attitudes and the growing understanding of the complex realities on the ground. Meanwhile, within the corridors of power, change is also brewing. A new generation of political leaders is rising, unafraid to challenge the status quo. Representative Rashida Tlaib, for instance, has been a vocal critic of Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories, and has repeatedly called for an end to U.S. support for Israel. Her sentiments are shared by a small but growing number of lawmakers who are pushing for a more balanced U.S. approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This shift in public sentiment is not just a political trend, it's a reflection of the changing demographics and values of the American people. Younger generations, more diverse and more globally aware, are questioning the traditional U.S. stance on Israel and demanding a foreign policy that aligns with their values of justice, human rights, and equality. The growing divide within the U.S. on this issue is significant. It represents a potential shift in the political landscape that could influence future policies. As more and more Americans voice their dissent, as more lawmakers question the status quo, the U.S. government may find itself compelled to reconsider its stance. This internal divide within the U.S. could potentially influence future policies. The voices of protest and dissent are growing louder. They can no longer be ignored. They are reshaping the narrative, challenging the status quo, and they may just herald a new era in U.S. foreign policy. So, where do we go from here? What could the future hold for U.S. policy towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? The path forward is uncertain, but it's clear that change is necessary. The United States policy towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict could be influenced by a number of factors. Let's delve into some possible scenarios. First, changes in U.S. leadership could lead to a shift in policy. Future administrations might take a more balanced approach towards the conflict, acknowledging both the needs of the Israeli state and the rights of the Palestinian people. This could manifest in various ways, from pushing for a two-state solution to re-evaluating the level of military aid provided to Israel. Second, international pressure plays a significant role. The United States is not an island, and global sentiment towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can impact U.S. policy. An increase in international pressure for a fair resolution, manifested through diplomatic channels or global institutions like the United Nations, could encourage the U.S. to rethink its stance. Lastly, shifts in public opinion within the United States could also influence policy. As more Americans voice their concerns about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, This could lead to a demand for a more balanced approach. The rise of social media has allowed for greater awareness and activism around the issue, potentially leading to a shift in the national conversation. However, it's important to remember that these are just potential scenarios. The road to peace is not a straightforward one. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is deeply complex, rooted in decades of history and fraught with emotion. Any resolution must consider the rights, needs, and aspirations of both Israelis and Palestinians. As we continue to watch this situation unfold, one thing is clear. The path to peace is complex and requires a nuanced understanding of the historical context and the current realities.